Current food production is causing challenges on the planet as both people and the planet are getting sick due to deforestation and biodiversity challenges. The planet and the people are sick. Why do I say that? As we produce our food, we are destroying the planet. But at the same time, 1 in 2 people on the planet are suffering from malnutrition. But in other countries, people are suffering from obesity. I'm joined in the studio today by a representative from the World Bank to discuss this global crisis. We want to talk about how countries are coming up with solutions to address this solution. Mrs. Supo from the World Bank, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Hello, Zimbabwe.
Briefly, talk to us. I understand the World Bank is looking at how the countries are looking for solutions in terms of maximizing the small pieces of land that we have without destroying the forests, without destroying the rivers, without destroying nature. How are countries coming up with solutions to feed the growing population, but at the same time not destroying the planet?
Thank you very much. What a mouthful. However, let me just elaborate that it is actually a devastating state that we are in, considering after the conference that we had in Washington some few years back, where we discussed how vital and critical this issue is. Statistically speaking, 50% of the population is hungry. There's hunger all over, yet we have arable land. So coming to your question that you're asking what exactly we are doing, as an organization, we have made it priority mark to work towards the goals that we needed to orient that we have discussed in that conference. So definitely we're putting into place, and funds are already permissible. We just need to work on a lot of nitty-gritties. But definitely we cannot leave such a global crisis to go on and on. We need to strive more and have the populations fed.
Thank you very much. Talking about hunger, we notice that hunger is more prevalent in Africa. But in Africa, that's where we have more of arable land. Where are we going wrong in Africa?
Indeed, it's very true. In fact, it's a paradox. How do we have where there's land and there's no food? So in that light, we need to devise plans on where it is that we're going wrong. Is it resources, farming equipment? All those things need to be addressed wholesomely and not just have a certain angle that we tackle, but to have a wholesome picture. So speaking of which, if Africa was utilized land-wise, it means the whole world would be fed, considering some of the waterlogged and landlocked countries that do not have arable lands. In that light, we also have wetlands that are being abused. All those things need to be looked into and probably conscientize the African nations on some of the practices that they could be doing that are hindering good productivity.
We really look forward to the solutions that the World Bank will bring on board. And if I may go further to ask, how have you been engaging the African governments in terms of providing solutions to this food crisis in Africa?
Right. If you take a look at the document that we have printed recently, where we had a conference with the African leaders, it highlights deeply on how all the African leaders have actually contributed on what is feasible on their part of their countries.
Thank you, Mrs. Cooper. We'll be right back. Thank you. Please stay tuned.
Good evening, Zimbabwe. Welcome to yet another edition of the Unsung Songs, of the Untalked Talks. With me tonight is a guest. Welcome. His name is Mr. Bernard. Mr. Bernard is going to be talking mainly. In fact, it's going to be a bit of a twist because he works for the women's rights movement as a man, But today I want him to talk about men's rights. Funny, isn't it, that we have to talk about men's rights? Welcome to the show, and just briefly tell us about this untalked movement of the men's rights.
Thank you for inviting me. I think it is of course about time that the world overall recognize also the rights for men. Many times we hear the noise that is always advocating for women's or perhaps children's rights, but not much we hear, but yet we see in many occasions whereby men's rights are being infringed, and so I think it is also important that we also take a moment and really consider the rights of men as well.
Okay, fine. I understand what you're saying, but flow me through, because you're being abrupt. What is it that men are crying out for? Is it just for the sake of it, since we have women's rights, so therefore let's have a counterattack? Or do we have basic, real deep, thought-provoking things that men are going through as a society? Let's just talk of probably our continent, for instance. What is it?
I think the very same rights that women could be crying for are the same rights that men also want to have those rights acknowledged or respected. Maybe if we talk of laws like to do with inheritance, and because like when you notice these days we have women that are also equally empowered as far as perhaps economically is concerned. So in those cases, when we have women that are also empowered, it means they are also in a position whereby they sometimes have an upper hand. If we are to compare, maybe in a family setup whereby the woman can also be the breadwinner, and in those cases we have that man in such a scenario being subjected to rights abuses, because simply by the very fact that the woman is now empowered.
But listen to this, Mr. Bennett. Sorry to cut you short. I like your generalizing. I want specifics. Are men being physically abused? Are they going through sexual abuse? Because from what you're saying, you said women have the same problem that men could be facing as well. So let's be on a factual scale, probably, if you might not have statistics per se, but what is it that is going on in men's lives that could actually need a raising of probably, I don't know, eyebrows? Are they going through all those other things that women always complain about?
We have men that are suffering abuse. We have, I think, read in papers
Exactly.
whereby sexually men are being abused. I think of late we have came across reports in Zimbabwe whereby there's been a spate of rape cases involving women and men being the victims. So I think we have the same cries or the same calls that women may have, which also men would also the very same respect to be accorded to them.
Viewers, here is a hot topic. I'm opening the phone lines so that we can converse and find out if truly men are getting sexually abused.
Hello and welcome to Africa Live. My name is Willie Moyo. Today on Africa Live, we are looking at President Emmerson Mnangagwa's announcement that Britain, alongside the United States, have also chipped in with their assistance for the relief as far as Cyclone Idai is concerned. Today in the studio, I have Dr. Miriam Moringami. She is the diplomatic and international trade minister to discuss the impact, perhaps the diplomatic impact of Cyclone Idai. Dr. Miriam, thank you for coming to Africa Live.
Thank you for having me.
Now, looking at the assistance that has been coming from all over the world, maybe specifically talking of countries in the African region, what do you make of such donations in light of the magnitude of this disaster?
Firstly, we are actually very grateful to the support that is coming from all over the world globally. We cannot think of a country, especially in Africa, that has not come to the assistance of the three countries that have been affected, that is Mozambique, Malawi, and Zimbabwe. So we are actually grateful for the support that we have received so far.
Now, specifically, the countries that have actually come in, which countries are we looking at?
We're looking at all our neighboring countries. We're looking at South Africa, the SADC region as a whole. We're looking at West Africa. We're looking at the whole of Africa. We've been receiving donations in all forms. So we are so grateful for those donations.
Now, let's zero in on Britain and America. Now, these two superpowers, maybe so to speak, have been very unfriendly or hostile to Zimbabwe, but they are coming on board. What would you make of that?
That is so true that they've been hostile, but when a nation is affected by such a disaster, we become one as a globe. This is about humanity. We put aside our beliefs, we put aside our politics, we put aside the sanctions, we look at affected lives. That's why even America, even Britain, they had to come on board, because this is about saving lives.
Okay, so looking at that mere gesture of sending in donations, maybe even as well as huge sums of money for aid relief, would you think this can grow up perhaps to a level whereby we will see an end to this sanctions regime?
Sure, it shows that we are all humans after all. We all have a good heart, every one of us. So when such things happen, I'm sure it affects everyone. I'm sure when they were looking at those pictures, they had to act, they had to do something, because it's a very, very sad situation. So that's why I said we put aside our differences and look at what needs to be done. So I believe one day those sanctions will eventually go away and we can have good relations with those two countries.
Dr. Miriam Mringambi, she is the Diplomatic and International Trade Minister, joining us here at African Life, discussing the impact of Cyclone Idai, perhaps the diplomatic impact of such a devastating disaster. Stay tuned here on African Life, and until that time, goodbye.
Good evening. Welcome to Issues and Views. Today we've got Baba Mavengere with us here. He's an educationist, and the topic that we're going to be talking about today is one that has been quite topical in the media and in the public domain this week. We're talking about the corporal punishment. And specifically we are talking about the outlawing the High Court ruling that was made this week. So we just want to look at some of the views that are coming from people in authority, people who are in the education sector, to just hear what they think about the whole issue. So like I said, we have with us here Baba Mavengere. Welcome to the program.
Thanks.
Baba Mavengere, you heard as I was talking, the issue that we have here is the one that has been quite gripping Zimbabwe.
Correct.
This whole week.
Correct.
Corporal punishment. What are your views?
Well, at the moment, I think rightly so, because at the moment I have conflicting ideas. When we say we actually remove corporal punishment completely, it has got its own wrongs if we remove completely. But if we reserve just a little, it would help. The Bible says, spare the rod and
spoil the child. So basically, Baba, what you're saying here is that we need to adjust.
Correct.
We don't have to totally eradicate, but
Correct.
we have to preserve a little bit of it.
Correct.
Maybe others. So what do you think is the way forward from now on?
Well, the way forward is, I think if we did it like we did in the past, remember during the time of Todd, he was lashing girls with a whip, and we had to stop the corporal punishment for the girls for specific reasons. I think that's what we should do with corporal punishment, where we choose cases where corporal punishment must be inflicted on children.
Do you think maybe this you spoke just now about the Todd era and where we are today, what we're talking about today? Do you think probably it shows that there's no policy coordination and probably there's no proper movement in terms of how government plans its policies,
Correct.
movement from what we had, where we are today, and probably where we're going in future? What do you think needs to be done, which areas need to be addressed and by which authorities?
I think what should have been done is we should have researched. Because if you look at it, there are cases where corporal punishment, I think, is necessary. You get a child who is actually so rough that that child beats other people every time that child goes to school. If you don't inflict punishment on that child will continue to beat others because you have stopped corporal punishment, you will continue to do it.
As a critical component, when you talk about corporal punishment in schools, obviously education is the critical component. Were you consulted? Do you feel you were consulted enough before this ruling came
I
out?
don't think they did consult enough. Because there are cases where corporal punishment is definitely, it is actually the amount of corporal punishment, and we are looking at the severity of the corporal punishment. Because when we do the corporal punishment, the way we used to inflict it ourselves, where you are looking at 3 lashes with a specific whip that does not injure the child.
What do you think is the way forward? What would you probably say is the way forward, maybe as a parting shot to our audiences?
Well, in my own opinion, I think there is need for a relook, because we are now going to produce brats in the children who are actually, there are some children who are naughty. If they are not given corporal punishment, they are going to turn into brats.
Thank you very much, Baba. That was very enlightening. So there you have it. We have had views from Baba Mapengere. He is telling us, as an educationist, he's been there. You heard him talking about the Todd era going way back into Zimbabwe's past. And he's saying probably we need to do more research as a nation, as a country. And probably the decision that was taken is probably not the best for our children and for our nation and for the future generations. So this topic continues to be hot and it continues to air. Thank you very much for joining us this evening.